They didn't fire me in the dark. No, they waited until the lights were bright and every chair in the conference room was filled. They needed an audience. That's how public executions work now. Quiet, professional, and utterly humiliating. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 51 years old, and until this morning, I was the senior brand strategist at Lark & Vale, one of the oldest marketing firms on the West Coast. 19 years. 19 years of campaigns, client wins, late nights, and staying 2 steps ahead of the industry curve. And none of it mattered. Not to them. I knew something was off the moment I walked into the quarterly review. Usually the room buzzed with quiet anticipation, slides clicking into place, junior analysts whispering about projections. But today, it was still. The kind of still that comes before a storm. Across the table sat Cassandra Ward, the CEO, 32, polished, loud on LinkedIn. She stood when I entered, not out of respect, but to position herself as the focal point. The others stayed seated. I nodded, took my seat, and waited. There was no small talk. She didn't ease into it. "Marcus," she said, flipping through a sleek tablet like it held my sins. "You've been a pillar here. But the industry's changed. The market's moving faster. We're pivoting to a new leadership model, agile, digital native." I blinked. My last campaign outperformed projections by 48%. "I'm aware," she said. "But visibility matters. You don't even post content. How can you lead a team in this space if you're not in the space?" I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Not Alex, who I mentored from intern to account lead. Not Priya, who used to call me her strategy compass. No one. I turned back to Cassandra. "So, let me get this straight. I'm being dismissed because I don't dance on TikTok?" She smiled the way people do when they've already moved on. "We've hired someone to bring new energy, a thought leader." "Who?" She motioned to someone waiting outside the glass doors. They opened slowly, and in walked my replacement. He couldn't have been more than 24. Bright eyes, hair like he hadn't stopped by a mirror, because he wanted it that way. Wearing a hoodie under a blazer. I recognized him from a viral video. Some influencer who made skits about brands missing the vibe. Meet Devin, fresh out of Columbia's media program. He's already got 1 million followers. We're confident he can lead the team into the next chapter. I stood. Not because I was angry, because I was done. "Let me guess," I said. "HR has a packet ready." As if on cue, Cynthia from HR appeared behind me with a tight-lipped smile and a manila envelope. "We're so grateful for your contributions, Marcus. You'll find everything you need in here. There's a transition document inside. Devin may reach out if he has any questions." "Of course," I said, voice calm. "Wouldn't want the child to get lost." I walked out of the room before they could reply. The hallway was strangely quiet. My nameplate was still on the door when I returned to my office. My shelves still held awards from campaigns that kept this company afloat during 2 recessions. My drawers still had the notebook I used when I pitched the rebranding strategy that got us the Jensen account. The one that paid for Cassandra's first bonus. I didn't pack much, just a framed photo of my daughter, and the fountain pen my wife gave me when I was promoted to partner, back when titles meant something. I left everything else. The elevator ride down was long. When the doors opened into the lobby, I felt every pair of eyes turn to me. Assistants, junior staff, interns. They all looked. None of them spoke. But I saw it. In some eyes, guilt. In others, fear. And in a few, just a few, there was awe. Not the flashy kind, but the kind you give to someone who didn't flinch when the floor dropped. I paused at the glass doors. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Clients, agencies, competitors. The game was still on, and I wasn't out of plays. "They thought they watched me fall," I said under my breath, gripping the door handle. But I was simply choosing not to kneel. Then I walked out. The first few days after I left Lark and Vale were a blur of silence. No farewell emails, no LinkedIn posts, just the occasional buzz of my phone. Automated notifications reminding me I was no longer part of the Slack workspace. A career ends not with a bang, but with a revoked login. I sat at my kitchen counter one morning, still in yesterday's shirt, nursing coffee that had long gone cold. My apartment was clean, but quiet, in a way that felt unnatural, like it had too much room for someone who used to be busy. I opened my laptop, not out of curiosity, but habit. I typed in the company name. The first thing I saw was a new video pinned at the top of their LinkedIn page. Devon, the influencer, was standing in front of a whiteboard, surrounded by a circle of employees, clapping offbeat. Someone added a beat drop over a team chant. He threw up finger guns and said something like, "If you're not trending, you're not leading." My jaw tightened. It wasn't even that it was cringe. It was hollow, like someone trying to turn corporate strategy into a pep rally. The comments were filled with emoji reactions and hashtags, team energy and next-gen leadership. But when I clicked on the view count, it wasn't impressive. Not for a million-follower influencer. Not for a company with clients paying 6 figures for actual results. I watched another clip, and another. Some parody of a pitch meeting that ended in a choreographed dance. I waited for the substance. It never came. No metrics, no insight, just glitter and noise. I shut the laptop. Was this really what the industry had become? I'd built campaigns that revived dying brands, crafted narratives that tripled engagement without ever needing a damn TikTok filter. And yet, this clown show was considered visionary? Still, the doubt crept in. Maybe I was obsolete. Maybe the problem wasn't them. It was me. I was too proud, too unwilling to get with the times. Maybe Cassandra had a point. But then, something small shifted. I got a message. It was from June Taylor, former VP of Strategy. She left Lark and Vale 3 years ago. We hadn't spoken since her early retirement. June. Saw what happened. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Let me buy you a drink. We have some catching up to do. I stared at the message. Then I opened LinkedIn and searched deeper. Not for trending hashtags, but for ghosts. Doug Chen, fired after 21 years, built the analytics department from scratch. Cynthia Morales, let go during a culture refresh. The woman who taught Cassandra how to read market data. Eli Crenshaw, replaced by a youth branding consultant who once tried to trademark the phrase vibe funnel. I started messaging them. Some were cautious, others were furious. But the through line was unmistakable. We hadn't been discarded because we failed. We'd been discarded because we were quiet. We didn't post selfies at the brainstorming table. We didn't shout our value. We just did the work. And that made us invisible in a world obsessed with noise. I spoke to June that evening over drinks at a rooftop bar in the city. She looked relaxed, retired from corporate nonsense, running a small consultancy on the side. Cassandra replaced competence with charisma, she said, stirring her gin. But charisma without wisdom is just theater. I nodded. They called it a pivot. I think it was just panic dressed up as progress. She laughed. You always had the best metaphors. You know, there's still room in the world for strategy, real strategy. The clients are still out there. They're just tired of the circus. Later that night, just as I was getting ready to sleep, my phone buzzed again. Alex, my old protege, the one who didn't meet my eyes in the boardroom. Can't say much, but Devon's in over his head. Clients hate the direction. Cassandra's pretending it's part of the process. We're hemorrhaging good accounts. I stared at the message. Then I read it again. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. They didn't replace me with innovation. They replaced me with illusion. And illusions only last until the lights come on. I rented a corner desk at a co-working space off 7th Street. Nothing fancy. Exposed brick, fast Wi-Fi, a decent espresso machine that hissed like it had opinions. My desk faced a window overlooking a mural of a phoenix rising from a pile of wires. Seemed appropriate. I didn't rush. I listened. Made lists. Reconnected with people who still believed the foundation mattered more than the facade. It started with Camilla, a designer I'd worked with for a decade. She'd left Lark and Vale after they asked her to simplify her aesthetic to match whatever style Devon was pushing that week. Translation: Swapcraft for templates. She said yes before I even finished asking. Then came Reggie, a data analyst who used to run metrics so deep clients thought we were reading their thoughts. Followed by Priya. Yes, that Priya, the one who'd looked away in the boardroom. She messaged me 2 weeks later. Said she was sorry. Said she couldn't unsee what happened. Said she was ready to build something that actually mattered. I didn't hold a grudge. I just said, come early. We start with silence and strong coffee. We called ourselves Lucent, short, clean, unpretentious. No splashy launches, no mission videos. Just a bare-bones site with 3 words under the logo: clarity, craft, consequence. We met in cafes, swapped mock-ups over croissants, whiteboarded in cafes that didn't care if we lingered too long. By week 4, we had our first client, a boutique skincare company I'd pitched 5 years earlier under Lark and Vale. Back then, we'd convinced them to go national. Now they wanted something smaller, intentional. We want to feel like a brand again, the founder said, not a feed. That account opened the gates. Then came the nonprofit who'd grown tired of buzzwords. Then a startup ready to graduate from memes to meaning. 2 became 5. 5 became 10. We didn't advertise. The work spoke. I didn't check Lark and Vale's feed often, but when I did, it was like watching someone desperately tread water while waving at a drone. Devon was still posting videos. One showed him doing a parody of a product demo while juggling oranges. Another featured him reacting to a client's old branding materials, calling them, "So 2014, it hurts." The comments were mostly bots and interns. The view counts dropped with each post. They'd traded depth for dopamine, and now the buzz was fading. Then the news broke. A major client, Ravix, their largest tech account, had pulled out mid-quarter. Rumor was they didn't like being turned into a meme. Some influencer campaign had gone live without final approval, and the CEO tried to pass it off as organic momentum. The board wasn't laughing. Still, Cassandra doubled down. She posted a carousel titled, "Disruption is messy, and that's okay." I recognized the tone. The kind people use when they're rearranging deck chairs and calling it a new business model. Meanwhile, we kept building. We didn't chase trends. We restored trust. We asked real questions. What does your brand mean when no one's watching? Who are you trying to serve? Audiences or algorithms? It was slower, quieter, more deliberate, but it worked. One night, around 11 p.m., I was in the co-working space alone. The janitor was vacuuming somewhere down the hall, humming along to a soft jazz station. My screen was glowing with a prototype site for a legacy bookstore chain we'd just signed. The layout was clean. The copy whispered, not shouted. It felt honest. Priya walked in with 2 paper bags. Thai food. "You haven't eaten, have you?" I shook my head. Didn't notice. She handed me a container and sat across from me, cross-legged on the floor like we used to during overnight pitch preps. We ate in silence, both of us leaning back against opposing walls, chopsticks clinking, the hum of the vacuum faint in the distance. "I haven't felt this kind of good tired in years," she said. "Me neither," I replied. We didn't toast. We didn't high-five. We just nodded. Two people who remembered why they got into this in the first place. That's when I realized I didn't need to prove Cassandra wrong. I didn't need to drag Devon through the mud. The market would do that for me. All I had to do was build something better. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my standard. The panel was called Sustainable Influence, Building Brand Trust in a Disposable World. I didn't name it, but when the invitation came, I didn't hesitate. It had been over a year since I left Lark and Vale, and in that time, Lucent had grown from 3 people and a laptop to a full team with clients who believed in substance over spectacle. I wasn't looking to rub it in. I just had something to say. The ballroom at the Easton Hotel was packed. Rows of marketing execs, brand reps, founders, all the usual suspects. My name was printed on a card in front of the mic. Marcus Hale, founder, Lucent Strategy. The moderator introduced me last, giving the crowd a list of campaigns Lucent had led in the past 6 months. I saw a few eyebrows rise. Recognition. Quiet, but present. I kept my message simple. Influence that burns hot fades fast, I said. The goal isn't to be viral, it's to be remembered. They clapped. Not the polite kind. The kind that meant they'd been waiting for someone to say it. Afterward, I slipped off stage and found a quiet corner by the bar, nursing a ginger ale and trying to dodge the selfie crowd. That's when I saw them. 3 junior staffers from Lark and Vale, grouped awkwardly by the buffet, whispering and casting glances in my direction. Eventually, one of them approached. Nervous, maybe 25, wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit. "Mr. Hale," he asked, I used to be in content strategy at L&V. I was in your onboarding seminar in 2019. You made us write brand manifestos." I smiled. "Still got yours?" He laughed nervously. "Buried somewhere in a Google Doc graveyard." The others joined him. They looked tired, overworked, underled. One of them spoke up. "Devon's struggling," she said. "He's good at hype, but when clients push for strategy, it gets messy. Campaigns are missing the mark. Cassandra keeps saying we're finding our voice, but it's like no one's driving." Another added, "Morale's rough. People are jumping ship. They hired a creative director with 0 marketing experience because he understands audience emotion, whatever that means." I didn't say much. I just listened. Their frustration wasn't vindication. It was confirmation. What I'd suspected was now fact. The house I helped build was sinking, and the new owners didn't know how to plug the leaks. 3 days later, the news broke. An anonymous source leaked an internal email thread between Cassandra and the board. It was brutal. Missed Q4 targets, multiple clients threatening to walk. One investor outright saying, "We bet on flash and lost faith." Another added, "We need leadership that understands gravity, not gimmicks." The story made it to Ad Ledger, then Fast Brand. The headlines were merciless. Lark and Fail. The cost of chasing clout. Inside a marketing meltdown. And then, late one evening, I got the call. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. I answered. "Mr. Hale," the voice said, measured, young, but trying to sound older. "I sit on Lark and Vale's board. We haven't met. I'd like to buy you a drink, off the record. No expectations." I paused. "Why me?" "Because memory matters," he said. "And right now, we're realizing who we should have listened to." I agreed to meet. Not out of spite, and certainly not for an apology. We chose a quiet rooftop bar overlooking the city. He was sharp, mid-30s, clean suit, no ego in his eyes. He didn't waste time. "We gambled on charisma," he admitted. "Thought it would modernize us. But we misunderstood the foundation. Cassandra could dazzle, but she couldn't anchor. And Devon, well, You saw the videos. I nodded. I did. We're considering restructuring, looking for insight, not necessarily a comeback, just guidance. I leaned back, let the silence settle. Then I said, she wasn't the problem. The system that crowned her without equipping her. That's the rot. He looked away. You're not wrong. I didn't pitch Lucent, didn't offer a proposal. I didn't need to. I was there to let them remember. Let them sit in the space between what they had and what they lost. As I stood to leave, he said, would you ever consider returning? Not full-time, maybe as a strategic partner? I smiled politely. I'm not looking backward. But if you ever want to build something real again, something grounded, you know where to find me. That night, back at my apartment, I poured a glass of bourbon and stepped onto the balcony. The city was humming below, same as it always had. I wasn't back for revenge. I was back to remind them who built the foundation. The rooftop cafe was quiet that morning. Not empty, just quiet in the way that places get when everyone's trying to have private conversations in public. The hum of espresso machines, metal chairs shifting on tile, soft music that sounded expensive but familiar. I'd chosen a corner seat with a view of the skyline and a slight breeze brushing my shoulder. Clarity likes high places. He arrived 5 minutes late, mid-30s, trim suit, haircut that screamed prep school. The board representative. He introduced himself by first name only, like this wasn't a formal meeting, but some coffee between old friends. I didn't bother pretending. Thanks for meeting, he said, setting down his cup. You asked for 10 minutes. I have 10, I said. No anger, just clean lines. He got to it quickly. The Cassandra bet didn't pay off. I think we both knew it wouldn't, but we were chasing something. Visibility, maybe. Edge. We thought charisma would replace competence. I stirred my coffee. Charisma's loud. Competence tends to whisper. He nodded. We thought leadership meant relevance, and relevance meant platform. It doesn't, I said. It never did. We sat in silence for a few beats. He looked out at the city like maybe it would answer for him. We're considering a restructure, he said. A reset, really. We want to bring in strategic thinkers again. Ground the ship, if you'd be open to consulting. I didn't let him finish. I'm not interested. His eyebrows lifted. You sure? You built the foundation of that firm. I know, I said, and I watched it get painted over by people who thought trend was a substitute for trust. I'm not here to retake the throne. I left the palace for a reason. He sipped his drink, quiet now, maybe humbled, maybe just thinking of what he'd tell the rest of the board. I don't blame her, I added. Cassandra. She was a symptom, not the disease. He tilted his head. Then what's the disease? The system, I said. The one that crowned her because she had followers. The one that measured volume instead of value. The one that built a stage, handed her a mic, and never once asked if she could lead. That's the rot. He leaned back in his chair and nodded slowly. I stood. Good luck, I said. You're going to need it. I didn't look back as I walked away. I didn't need to. Back at Lucent, the energy was different. Our office was still tucked in a converted warehouse with rough wood floors and old iron beams. But now the walls were filled with sketches, campaign maps, post-it trails that looked like spider webs of meaning. We weren't loud, but the results were. That afternoon we launched our latest campaign for a sustainability brand. Not the kind that slaps a green leaf on packaging and calls it a day, but the real kind. The kind that rethinks process, production, and impact. We'd spent 3 months working alongside their founders, understanding not just what they sold, but why it mattered. The campaign wasn't flashy. No viral dance challenge. No mascot in a bucket hat saying, "Let's go." It was a series of quiet stories. Families reducing waste, artists repurposing materials, everyday people changing how they lived because a brand respected their intelligence. When it went live, the response wasn't explosive. It was deep. Comments from people who said they felt seen. Emails from clients asking if we could work with them next. A message from one of the clients Lark and Vale lost last quarter. Now this is what we were missing. The team didn't cheer. They didn't need to. They just kept working, heads down, like quiet confidence was a posture they finally remembered. I stood at the back of the room, watching it all unfold. Reggie cross-checked conversion rates. Priya mapped next phase engagement. Camilla sketched out the bones of another client's brand story on a whiteboard with a calm that looked like power. I thought about the old office, the conference room where they fired me, the silence of the elevator, the weight of that manila envelope. They'd said I was obsolete. But when the storm hit, they remembered who built the shelter. I wasn't after revenge. I was after memory. And now, they'll never forget.